This little phrase, to live is Christ, it's easy to say the conviction that gives it fuel and wings ebbs and flows. So the to live is Christ is something that we're going to probably in this room agree on. Of course, to live is Christ. But Paul, when he says it, he's saying it with the deep conviction that he had seen all the other paths were bankrupt. And so if we even look at the church at Philippi, he had seen Lydia. He had seen her wealth and her comfort, her nice house. In fact, he stayed at that house. Now, the Bible doesn't tell us much about her house, but here's what I know. She has a house in Thyatira, and she has a house in Philippi, and she's some sort of fashionista. I'm just guessing she's got a sweet pad. He had stayed in that house. He had seen her wealth. He had been around those with trinkets and toys, and he knew it to be bankrupt. So when he says to live is Christ, he's saying it's got to be because it can't be that. Now, hear me. You are almost every moment of your day being seduced and discipled on what life is about. Every commercial, every movie, every sitcom, we are being discipled. The very air we breathe says that the way to live was the way Lydia was living before Jesus. Trinkets and toys and stuff and comfort. The God of our generation is comfort. Suffering is not looked upon as anything other than something to be solved. How do we solve this? How do we fix it? And if it's painful to fix it, we'd rather not fix it. We don't want pain to free us from pain. We just want no pain. And so suffering becomes problematic, not providential. God becomes this weak God in the heavens. It's always having to huddle people, huddle up the Trinity again and go, hey, who let Chandler get brain cancer? Who let this happen? No. See, be careful. Be careful. Because we're being discipled that comfort, wealth, trinkets, and toys is life. But Paul, with great conviction, says, no. To live is Christ, because he had seen the bankruptcy of Lydia's life. He saw her out on the outskirts of town trying to find who God was. He had seen that her way of life was bankrupt. And so when he said to live is Christ, he wasn't putting that over a real pursuit of wealth and comfort as though he were Aladdin and God was in the lamp. And by saying it, he could get God to do what he wanted him to do. That's not what was going on here. He's saying to live is Christ. He had seen the jailer. You know what I'm talking about? That respectable blue collar. I'm not from Texas, but I've been in Texas long enough to be Texan. Now I say fixin' to. There's all sorts of weird things I do now because I've been there for 20-something years. But this kind of picture in Texas of kind of the Chevy truck owning callous, messed up face, saddle being thrown. This kind of man's man, grimy, respectable. I work hard. I pulled myself up by my bootstraps, that high disciplined, high achiever, high persister type persona. Paul had seen that it was bankrupt. Paul saw the jailer. He had argued with the intellects on Mars Hill. He saw that it was bankrupt. Gosh, if we just kept reading in Philippians, doesn't he look at his own religious attainments and call them rubbish? The reason Paul, with deep conviction here, says to live is Christ is because he says everything is rubbish compared to the surpassing greatness of knowing Christ Jesus, my Lord. It's all rubbish next to the surpassing greatness of Jesus. That's why he says to live is Christ. And you might say it, but you won't get it in your guts until you see the surpassing value of Jesus above and beyond everything else that our culture exalts as valuable. Listen, he who finds a wife finds what is good. I've got one, it's good. but she's not more valuable than Jesus. Children are a blessing from the Lord. Absolutely they are. I love being a daddy, but it's not better than Jesus. Listen, all sorts of things. See, look, when I got sick, I mean, so much idolatry was exposed in me. Like good things that I had just exalted beyond where they should be. No, you can't say in your heart, with your guts, to live is Christ until you see his surpassing greatness above and beyond everything else in the world. And so it's interesting that for all the to live is Christ agreement, that so little of our lives are actually about Christ. So little of our lives is actually shaped by him, informed by him, and driven by his word. I think oftentimes what we mean when we say to live is Christ is that to live is my version of Christ. Not the one we find in the Bible, but the one that we have created in our minds. Thank you. Somebody's talking back. I appreciate that. So in the end, it's this, the Jesus that I like, the one that I can trust, the one that would never do this, the one that wants to be cool. So we got to do this. You're never going to be cool enough. You get that? That's got to die. That is junior high nonsense. May it die before you get in your late 20s, early 30s, because it becomes sad when you're 40. And you still want to be cool. Stop. What is that? What is it? You get an invitation to the skating rink with a certain group? Like, I don't know why we're trying to make Jesus cool. He doesn't need a makeover. He doesn't need one. He's not meant to be hip. He's the Alpha and the Omega. He transcends that nonsense. Like, what are we defining what's cool? Are you serious? To the one who's always been and will always be. In everything that we would exalt as hip and cool, kind of ridiculous to him. Try to fit him in those categories. No. To live is Christ means that I have seen the surpassing greatness of knowing Jesus Christ above every other valuable thing known to man. It's not that there are not good things. It's not that there aren't blessings to be had, things, gifts given to us by God to be enjoyed. Of course those things are there, but none of them are greater than Christ. None of them. In fact, those gifts are given so that our worship and enjoyment of Christ might increase, and I'll help you with this. Sometimes they are withheld so that your worship of Christ will be there. To live is Christ. In fact, Christ alone is worthy of an entire life's affection and devotions, and he's worthy of much more. So if all the affections I can muster, all the devotion I can muster in all of my life were thrown at his feet, it would still be lacking, which is why Paul says, for to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. See, if Jesus is our treasure, then a face-to-face meeting with our treasure is not scary.